The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the air as I opened my eyes for the first time in 3 months. Everything was blurry, and my throat felt like sandpaper. A nurse rushed to my side, speaking words I couldn't quite grasp. But one thought cut through the fog in my mind. Where were my children? I'm Julia Thompson, and before the accident that put me in a coma, I was preparing for war with my mother-in-law, Margaret Sterling. Now, as consciousness slowly returned, I realized she had used my absence to make her move. Your children are with their grandmother, the nurse explained gently when I managed to ask. Your mother-in-law has temporary custody while you recover. The words hit me like a physical blow. Margaret had finally done it. She'd taken my kids. I tried to speak again, but my voice wouldn't cooperate. Tears of frustration rolled down my cheeks as I thought of my twins, Emma and Ethan, just 6 years old. What had Margaret told them about me? As my strength gradually returned over the next few days, I learned what had happened. Margaret had convinced my husband, David, that I was an unfit mother while I was unconscious. She'd used my accident, a car crash that wasn't even my fault, as evidence of my recklessness. She filed for emergency custody, painting herself as the concerned grandmother stepping in to protect her grandchildren. What Margaret didn't know was that I'd been collecting evidence against her for months before the accident. Every manipulative text, every threatening voicemail, every incident of her undermining my parenting, I had documented it all. I'd known she was planning something. I just hadn't expected her to strike while I was literally fighting for my life. The physical therapy was grueling, but my determination to reclaim my children pushed me through the pain. Every time I wanted to give up, I thought of Emma and Ethan in Margaret's house, being turned against me day by day. David visited occasionally, looking uncomfortable and guilty. He'd always been weak when it came to his mother, unable to stand up to her controlling nature. Now he was caught between us, and true to form, he'd chosen the path of least resistance. The kids are doing well, he said during one visit, not meeting my eyes. Mother has them enrolled in private school now. She thinks it's better for them. Better than the school we chose together. I managed to say, my voice stronger now but still raspy. The one near our house with a great special education program for Emma's dyslexia. He shifted in his chair. Mother says Emma just needs more discipline, not special treatment. I clenched my fists under the hospital blanket. Margaret had always dismissed Emma's learning difficulties, claiming our daughter was just lazy. It was one of the many reasons I'd started documenting her behavior. Have you told them I'm awake? I asked. David looked away. Mother thinks it's better to wait until you're stronger. She doesn't want to upset them. Of course she didn't. Every day I was kept from my children was another day she could poison them against me. But Margaret had underestimated me. She thought the accident had given her the perfect opportunity, but she didn't know what was waiting on my laptop at home or in the safety deposit box at the bank. The day I was finally released from the hospital, my best friend Amy picked me up. She'd been keeping tabs on Margaret for me, gathering new evidence to add to my existing file. She's gotten worse, Amy told me as we drove to her house. I'd be staying with her while I continued my recovery. She's told everyone who'll listen that you were drinking the night of the accident. I was at work, I said, anger burning in my chest. There are security cameras and witnesses. I know, I've got it all documented. Amy glanced at me. She's also been posting things on social media about how the kids are finally getting the stable home they deserve. I saved screenshots. We pulled up to Amy's house, and she helped me inside. My legs were still weak from months of disuse, but I was getting stronger every day. On her dining room table, I saw stacks of papers, everything she'd gathered while I was unconscious. Your laptop is still at your house, Amy said. David doesn't know about the hidden folder, does he? I shook my head. No one does except you and my lawyer. I picked up one of the papers, a social media post where Margaret claimed I'd been neglecting the twins before the accident. She has no idea what's coming. That night, as I lay in Amy's guest room, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Margaret before the accident. She'd shown up at my house unannounced, as usual, criticizing everything from the kids' clothes to the snacks in the pantry. They deserve better than this, she'd said, gesturing around my perfectly clean, comfortable home. They deserve what I can give them. They deserve their mother, I'd replied. And one day, Margaret, everyone will see exactly what kind of person you really are. She'd laughed dismissively, but I'd seen the flash of uncertainty in her eyes. She'd known I was documenting things, but she had no idea how thorough I'd been. Now, as I struggled to regain my strength, I thought about my children. Were they wondering about me? Did they think I'd abandoned them? Margaret would be using every moment to turn them against me, but I had to believe that the bond between mother and child was stronger than her manipulation. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. The file I'd been building was extensive. Recordings of Margaret threatening to take the kids, evidence of her lying to social services, documentation of her interfering with Emma's dyslexia treatment. She thought my accident had given her the perfect opportunity to strike. Instead, it had given me the perfect opportunity to expose her true nature. Margaret Sterling was about to learn that you should never underestimate a mother's love or her capacity for strategic thinking. I closed my eyes, picturing Emma and Ethan's faces. "Hold on, babies," I whispered into the darkness. "Mommy's coming." The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Rebecca Chen, in her downtown office. Despite my still weakened state, I insisted on going through every detail of what had happened during my coma. Margaret Sterling played this well, Rebecca admitted, reviewing the temporary custody papers. She filed while you were unconscious, painted herself as the concerned grandmother stepping in during a crisis. The judge had little choice given the circumstances. "But now I'm awake," I said, my voice firm. "And I have everything we need to show exactly who Margaret really is." I pulled out my phone, connecting to Amy's secure cloud drive where we'd backed up all my evidence. 3 years of documentation. Texts, emails, recordings, witness statements. "She's been planning this for years, Rebecca. The accident just gave her the opportunity she needed." Rebecca's eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. "This is comprehensive. You have recordings of her threatening to take the kids?" "Multiple recordings, plus evidence of her interfering with Emma's dyslexia treatment, lying to social services about my parenting, even attempting to bribe our nanny to spy on me." I leaned forward. "She's been trying to manipulate my children since they were born, and I've documented all of it." As Rebecca reviewed the evidence, I received a text from Amy. "Margaret just posted another Facebook update about the twins. You need to see this." The post showed my children at some expensive private school, wearing uniforms I'd never seen. Margaret's caption read, "So grateful these precious angels are finally getting the education and stability they deserve. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways to ensure children end up where they belong." My hands shook with anger as I showed Rebecca the post. She's using my accident, an accident that nearly killed me, to justify stealing my children. "This works in our favor," Rebecca said, taking screenshots. "She's creating a public record of parental alienation. But Julia, I need to warn you, this won't be easy. Margaret has resources, connections, she'll fight dirty." "So will I replied. "But unlike her, I have the truth on my side." That afternoon, I had my first physical therapy session since leaving the hospital. As I struggled through the exercises, my therapist, Maria, told me something interesting. "Your mother-in-law called the hospital several times while you were in the coma," she said, helping me with my leg stretches. "She kept asking about your prognosis, whether you have any permanent disabilities. She seemed disappointed when we told her you were expected to make a full recovery." I filed this information away, adding it to my mental list of Margaret's manipulations. She'd probably been hoping I'd be too impaired to fight back. Later that day, David came to Amy's house. He looked tired, older somehow. "The kids ask about you," he said softly. "Mother tells them you're still too sick to see them." "And you let her?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "They're our children, David, not hers." "She's just trying to help," he started, but I cut him off. "Is she helping Emma with her dyslexia? Or is she still insisting our daughter just needs to try harder?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the videos I'd taken of Margaret berating Emma for her reading difficulties. "Is this helping?" David's face paled as he watched the footage. I didn't know." "Because you never wanted to see it," I said. "You've always chosen the easy path, letting your mother control everything because it's easier than standing up to her. But now she's hurting our children, and I won't let that continue." I showed him more evidence, the text messages where Margaret had outlined her plans to take the kids. The recordings of her threatening me when she thought no one was listening. With each revelation, I saw the carefully constructed image of his perfect mother crumbling. "She's not who you think she is," I said quietly, "and deep down you've always known that." He left looking shaken, and I knew Margaret would notice his distress. She'd demand to know what I'd said to him, try to reassert her control. Let her. The cracks were already showing in her carefully constructed facade. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor, my former nanny Sophie. She'd quit shortly before my accident, and now I knew why. Mrs. Sterling offered me money to spy on you, Sophie confessed, sitting in Amy's living room. When I refused, she threatened to ruin my reputation, make sure I never worked as a nanny again. I was scared, so I just quit. I'm so sorry, Julia. I should have told you. Would you be willing to make a statement? I asked. Legally, on record? Sophie nodded firmly. I saved the emails where she made the offers. And I recorded some of our conversations. I knew something wasn't right about how she was acting. Another piece of evidence to add to my arsenal. Margaret's web of manipulation was vast. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed she was the only one who knew how to play the long game. As I lay in bed that night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Emma and Ethan, clearly taken that day. They looked sad, lost. Beneath it was a message. They're where they belong now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I showed the message to Amy, who immediately began tracing the number. Margaret's attempt at intimidation had just given us more evidence of her harassment. We file tomorrow, I told Rebecca over the phone. I want my children back, and I want Margaret Sterling to face consequences for what she's done. Are you sure you're strong enough? Rebecca asked. We could wait a few more weeks. I've been gathering evidence against Margaret for 3 years, I replied. I'm done waiting. She thought my accident was her opportunity to take my children. Instead, it's going to be her undoing. I ended the call and looked at the photo of my twins again. Hold on just a little longer, I whispered. Mommy's coming for you, and this time, no one will ever take you away from me again. The next morning would mark the beginning of my counterattack. Margaret Sterling was about to learn that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life when she decided to target my children. Because while she'd been playing at being the perfect grandmother, I'd been building a case that would expose her for exactly what she was. A manipulative, controlling woman who'd finally gone too far. And I was going to make sure everyone knew it. The courtroom was silent as my evidence against Margaret Sterling played on a large screen. 3 years of documented abuse, manipulation, and calculated attempts to steal my children, all laid bare for everyone to see. Video clips showed Margaret berating Emma for her dyslexia, calling her lazy and stupid. Audio recordings captured her threatening to take my children away. Emails revealed her attempts to bribe our nanny and manipulate social services. I sat straight backed in my chair, my gaze fixed on Margaret as her carefully crafted image crumbled. She had grown increasingly pale as each piece of evidence was presented, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the arms of her chair. And while Mrs. Thompson was in a coma, Rebecca continued, addressing the judge. Margaret Sterling didn't just file for emergency custody. She actively worked to prevent any possibility of reunification, spreading lies about Mrs. Thompson's fitness as a mother and attempting to alienate the children from their mother. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Patricia Martinez, had been taking detailed notes throughout the proceedings. Now she looked directly at Margaret. Mrs. Sterling, these allegations are extremely serious. The evidence suggests a long-term campaign of harassment, manipulation, and parental alienation. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Margaret's lawyer leaned over to whisper something, but she brushed him off, standing up with the entitled confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Everything I did was for my grandchildren, she declared. Their mother was clearly incapable of providing the life they deserved. The accident proved that. I simply stepped in to give them stability and proper guidance. Proper guidance? I couldn't help but speak up. Like telling Emma her dyslexia is fake. Like canceling her therapy appointments because you think she just needs discipline. Like telling my children their mother abandoned them while I was fighting for my life in a coma. Order. Judge Martinez called, though her expression had hardened at my words. The next few hours were a parade of witnesses, Sophie, the nanny, testifying about Margaret's attempted bribery. My physical therapist describing Margaret's disappointment when I showed signs of recovery. Even David, who finally found his backbone and spoke about his mother's long history of manipulation. By the time the judge called a recess, Margaret's composure had completely cracked. I caught her furiously texting on her phone, probably trying to rally her society friends for support. but no amount of social connection could erase the evidence I gathered. When court resumed, Judge Martinez didn't waste time. The evidence in this case is overwhelming, she began. Margaret Sterling, you have engaged in a systematic campaign of parental alienation and manipulation. Your actions during Mrs. Thompson's medical crisis were particularly egregious. Not only did you take advantage of her incapacitation to gain custody of her children, but you actively worked to prevent their reunion once she recovered. Margaret started to protest, but the judge held up her hand. I am immediately vacating the temporary custody order. The children are to be returned to their mother's care within 24 hours. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order preventing you from having any contact with Mrs. Thompson or her children without court approval and supervision. The victory was complete, but I felt no joy, only relief and determination. Now came the hard part, helping my children heal from the damage Margaret had caused. When I arrived at Margaret's house with the police and social services to collect Emma and Ethan, I could hear her raging inside, declaring that she'd appeal, that she'd never stop fighting for her children. But then the door opened, and none of that mattered anymore. My babies were there, looking uncertain and confused until they saw me. Mommy, Emma whispered, her voice small and unsure. I knelt down, opening my arms. Yes, sweetheart, Mommy's here, and I'm never leaving you again. They ran to me, and as I held them close, I could feel Margaret's poisonous influence beginning to fade. We had a long road ahead. Therapy for the twins, rebuilding trust, healing as a family, but we would do it together. David, who had watched the reunion from a distance, finally approached. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have seen what she was doing. Should have stopped her years ago. I nodded, not ready to forgive him completely but acknowledging his part in helping expose Margaret's true nature. The kids will need you to be strong now. No more letting your mother control everything. She won't, he promised. I've already told her I'm cutting contact until she gets professional help. The kids come first now. As we drove home, really home, to the house Margaret had deemed unsuitable, but that held all our happy memories, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. Margaret had spent years weaving her web of manipulation, thinking she was untouchable. She never imagined that every step of the way I was building my case. Are we really staying with you now? Ethan asked from the backseat. Grandmother said you didn't want us anymore. Grandmother lied, I said firmly. I will always want you. You're my children, and nothing will ever change that. Later that night, after the twins were asleep in their own beds for the first time in months, I received one final text from Margaret. This isn't over. I smiled, taking a screenshot to add to my ever-growing file of evidence. Yes, Margaret, I whispered to myself. It is. Because while she had spent years playing the role of the perfect grandmother, I had been gathering proof of the monster beneath the mask. She thought my accident was her opportunity to steal my children. Instead, it had given me the chance to expose her true nature to the world. Margaret Sterling had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate a mother's love or her capacity for justice.